Welcome to the Inside Sales Enablement Podcast. Where has the profession been? Where is it now? And where is it heading? What does it mean to you, your company, other functions, the market? Find out here. Join the founding father of the sales enablement profession, Scott Santucci, and trailblazer Brian Lambert as they take you behind the scenes of the birth of an industry. The Inside Sales Enablement Podcast starts now.
I'm Scott Santucci.
I'm Brian Lambert, and we are the Sales Enablement Insiders. Our podcast is for sales enablement leaders looking to elevate their function, expand their sphere of influence, and increase the span of control within their companies.
Together, Brian and I have worked on over 100 different kinds of sales enablement initiatives. As analysts, consultants, or practitioners, we've learned the hard way what works, and maybe more importantly, what doesn't.
Our podcast is different. We use a conversational format to help share the experiences that only people who have been there, done that can provide, as we have been pushing the envelope on the profession for over a decade. And today, in this show, we will discuss, what does the seller's experience really look like? Is your system set up to help sellers be successful? And what does an integrated enabling program look like? As usual, we start with a centering story to give our episode a theme. So Scott, take it away from here.
Thank you, Brian, and hello, everybody. One of the things that we get the opportunity to do, and as more and more of you users, we're calling you Insider Nation, keep listening, we get more and more feedback. And I had the opportunity to have a conversation with one of our listeners. I'm going to try not to out too much about her because I'm sure this is embarrassing. And we were talking, and one of the things that she was saying is that sometimes some of the things that I say, make her feel stupid. And, are you an academic person? And Brian, full well, boy, do I hate being called academic, but maybe sometimes the way that I think about things and talk about them sound that way.
Yeah, you deserve it.
Thanks. I appreciate solidarity there, Brian.
Just kidding.
So one of the things that
it's an interesting thing, right?
Yeah, one of the things is this topic is such a hard thing. It's both simple and easy, as we like to talk about sales. It's both sales is simple, but simple ain't easy. And one of the things that I'd like to share this time is to talk about what makes me so passionate about sales enablement. And actually, one of the things that I'd like to share is a story from when I was in the field. So we're going to go back in the way, way, way back machine. The company at the time, I was working at Metagroup, and in our third episode, we actually talked about how I built a sales enablement function there. But this is before even that. And
that's right, because you actually came out of the field. You were a seller before that.
That's right.
Illustrated in that episode. So this is actually, is that going to be the story when you were a seller?
Right. Exactly. It's a prequel. So this story isn't really that great. It doesn't put me in the greatest light. But as a seller, we'd just gone through sales training, and specifically, it was solution selling training. And if you've seen the movie Jerry Maguire, where Jerry wrote that letter, that memo out to everybody and was just really, really excited, I was really, really excited. At the time, we were selling these subscription services. So Metagroup is been acquired by Gartner Group. So if you can imagine buying reports. And we would sit there and be trained to talk about what the deliverables are. Here's our service. Here's our SS&S service. Here's our GNS service. Here are the 5 things that you do. Here are the deliverables about it. You get these deliverables, and you get this teleconference, and you get these conference tickets, and blah, 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 blah. So if that's what we were talking about, who do you think that I was selling to? I was selling people like a guy named Mark Fleischman, who actually was at Belcor, and his job was more or less a librarian. He would meet me in the cafeteria. He wouldn't even bring me in. I wouldn't even get the code to get in, right? That's how low level. And we would debate about how many license fees and what the usage was. And we would haggle between $15,000 or $16,000 about what the renewal was for that particular service. That was rough, and it sure as heck wasn't what I thought was selling. I walk out of this solution selling training, and I'm excited. I'm going to go and learn to go talk to executives. That's what I was going to do. So my primary focus was I'm going to go talk to executives. So think about it going from...
You were all in, huh? You drank the Kool-Aid. You're excited?
I really drank the Kool-Aid. I was a process zealot at the time. I thought the solution selling thing was fantastic. I drank the Kool-Aid. I went all in.
That's good.
Yes, it is good. So the first thing that I did at the time, my territory was the state of New Jersey. And the very first opportunity that I got, I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go call on the CIO at Merck. And literally, this is no joke. The CIO at Merck's name was Dr. Popper.
So you're going to go from the librarian, eating a salad with the librarian, to calling Dr. Popper, the CIO at Merck.
Well, yeah, of course, right? That's what they wanted us to do in the training, right?
That's a transformative experience right there.
Well,
awesome.
we'll talk about that. So I called up and I left a voicemail message. I can't remember exactly what it was. I went to lunch. I'm feeling pretty good. I come back. I see that I have a couple voicemails on my machine, and I'm excited because Dr. Popper's obviously going to invite me back in so I can give him my pitch, and all the solution selling stuff is great. Well, actually, on my voicemail, there were 3 voicemails. All of them were from Merck. None of them were from Dr. Popper. And they were progressively more agitated, threatening almost. And this is no lie, saying that I'm just a vendor. I'm not to talk to call on Dr. Popper. I was going to say Dr. Pepper. And if you ever do this again, we're going to make sure that you don't sell anything to Merck ever again.
Dang.
So
not only did you get 1 call, you got 3 calls back. They're just a little threatening.
That's right. So I'd love to be able to tell you what awesome heroic thing that I did to be able to recover from that situation, but that wouldn't be the truth. The truth is I said, screw it. I packed up my things. I went home. I shut the shades of my apartment at the time.
Hang on, this is getting weird.
I put on Free Willy, and I just watched Free Willy because I wanted to feel happy because I felt so small. I didn't call on a CIO again for a while. I went back to the Ari Fleischman's again, Michael Fleischman's again, until finally I got my courage up again. So my next time was, I said, all right, dust that off, shake it off, Scott, shake it off, Scott. You still believe in that solution selling stuff. So the next time I went after, this was before Campbell Soups moved their headquarters, and their headquarters was in New Jersey. So I called on the CIO of Campbell Soups, and honestly, I can't even remember his name. And Brian, did you see the movie Wall Street?
Yeah, a long time ago, though.
Yeah, I know. It's so dated.
It's in the way back machine.
All my references are so dated. I'm clearly not a millennial. But in Wall Street, there's this scene where Bud Fox, the main character, Charlie Sheen, gets his meeting with Gordon Gekko. And how did he get his meeting with Gordon Gekko? Do you remember?
No, I don't. Tell us.
He called Gordon Gekko every day for like 80 days in a row, and showed up the day of Gordon Gekko's birthday with a box of cigars.
Oh, that's right.
And Gordon Gekko finally let him in. Well, I'd seen that movie, and I swear to God, I literally called this guy for 60 days straight till finally I got him on the phone. And every single time I left a voicemail, so he kind of knew me. I would highlight research where I thought our research was better than Gartner's because I knew he was a big Gartner shop. And I just kept calling. And lo and behold, one of those days, he actually answered the phone. What did I do? What happened?
You froze up?
Yeah, exactly. I would love to tell you an awesome story about I had this great rep and I, got a meeting with him. Nope. I kind of went, because And he was nice about it. Scott, you've been pretty persistent. Can you please tell me how you're different than Gardner? And then I fumbled through some words. It was sort of like a word salad of a bunch of things that I had heard around that we've been talking about. And he said, well, I gave you my ear time. Will you please stop calling me now? And I went, yep. So opportunity number 2. What did I do? I went back down to selling to the cubicle people. All right.
No free Willy 2.
Okay, so fast forward now. Maybe 2 months later, I'd worked on an opportunity, and I was able to get access to this guy named Keith Keble. Keith Keble at the time was the VP of Shared Services at Bristol Myers Squibb. I knew that he had responsibility for a budget that was $50 million. So good access, right? Access to adult money. And at the time, they were implementing SAP, and they had the Cooper's team in there, and we were talking about how now I'm getting more into a wrap about what our products do, and our products you should be thinking about our products like an insurance policy, because who knows what the risk of a bad decision could be. And I had told them about like what would happen if Hershey. You've heard about the Hershey incident where they had an SAP challenge and they weren't able to ship candy. What would happen to you if you did that? So all you have to do is buy our particular service for X number of dollars is like a decision-making insurance policy. So that all sounded great. He invited us in, and really what the goal was, I didn't really know what the goal was, and I didn't ask. I said, awesome. Like I was excited. Sure. So I brought my subject matter expert, Barry Wilderman, in with me, and the 2 of us show up, and there were 20 of them because this was such a big deal. And they started using a lot of language that I had no idea what these people were talking about. Honestly, there was like words like release and instance and things like that I had no idea what they were, and I just wrote the keywords down. When we were leaving in the parking lot to get back in the car, I said, well, what happened in that meeting, Barry? How did it go? He said it went great. And he listed off 3 or 4 problems that they were going to have. So I was like, super great. So I called Keith back the next day. Hey, Keith, blah, blah, blah. Had a great relationship. How did it go? He's like, it was great. That was a great meeting. Thank you very much. And I said, so you ready to do business with us? I'm getting ready to close on my solution sale, Brian. How did that go? He said, well, Scott, you kind of confirmed that we're on the right track. And I said, well, Barry says you're going to you got problems. He said, oh, well, what are they?
Barry says you got problems.
And I said, I don't know. You want to get him back on the phone? And at that point in time, I lost all my credibility.
Yeah.
I was never able to get Keith Keble on the phone ever again. So here I'm at 6 months into my solution selling experience. How do you think I was performing? What were my overall numbers like?
0.
Yeah. Dude, I was on a PIP.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
hang on a second. So you had these at-bats, you're doing what the company says, and your manager puts you on a PIP.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I was on a PIP.
Talk about that later. But,
yeah. I was on a PIP, and we can talk about what our plan was. I was on a PIP. So now I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm worried about losing my job. I certainly wasn't, killing it as a rep. I was about at target, about at plan, maybe 80% when I was selling products to the Fleischmans, but my cubicle pipeline was all gone because, as you know, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of effort to try to build relationships with executives. But thank goodness, and I sort of had this come to Jesus moment with myself saying, what the heck, just be you. So thank goodness I've been building a relationship with one of the CIOs. So the way J&J is organized is around these sectors, and I had built a relationship with one of the CIOs in one of the sectors. And I've been talking with him about the idea of an insurance policy, but not about one product, but across all of our products. I talked a lot about decision making. I said, why don't we facilitate a meeting of your direct reports? And one thing led to another, and suddenly things started clicking in. And with a company so large and so many different IT leaders, at the end of the year, I had done $3 million of business with Johnson & Johnson. So I'd done basically 3x what my quota was, and that's one of the reasons that I became one of the top reps, aside from writing all the business of the story that we talked about in the second part.
So solution selling did work.
Well, see, I don't know whether it did or didn't, because I didn't really follow the solution selling script. I used some of the elements of it.
Yeah.
Basically, what I did was just get back to, what problems do you have, Mr. CIO? Well, we're worried about making the wrong decisions. There's a lot of choices with technology. Well, we have a lot of experts. Would you like to have experts on hand? That sounds great. How does that work? Well, let's simulate how that works. Let's put it to use. And, because I kept working on helping them use it, they actually gave me a desk there. I actually had a badge that I would go in my desk. And when you're there and you hear all the challenges, it's kind of easy, right, to sell. But it took building that relationship. It took forgetting a lot of the stuff that I learned in solution selling and focus more on the people. And that's my story.
Cool. So it started out with Dr. Popper, then Free Willy, then Charlie Sheen and cigars, then Bristol Myers Squibb with the insurance policy pitch, and then 6 months in, you're on a PIP.
On a PIP. Yep. On a PIP. About ready to get fired.
Then you had your soul-searching moment. You're like, screw it, I'm just going to be myself. If I'm going to get fired, I might as well go down just being true to myself. I can relate. And then J&J conference meetings, and then that's how we ended up at that other podcast. Can't remember the exact number, but
number 3.
Number 3. Yeah. So and the cool thing about that is, it sounds like one, you figured out how to get access to executives, right?
Well, the hard way.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. Would we want other people to learn that way?
No. Well, and kudos to you. A lot of people probably wouldn't have been as committed. That's what's cool about that story is you were all in. You came out of that experience. You hit the I believe button.
You have no idea how many of my friends told me to not. They would say that stuff is BS. Look at that and look at our pipelines. At least we're not killing it either. But at least we're making money, right? Like, dude. Yeah. And my friends they thought they were watching out for me. So I had that. I had the internal talk track of not doing well. I had my managers up my butt, and of course, when you're on a PIP, it's not just your manager, right? You have to do a review with the VP of sales too,
because that's when the help starts.
The quote unquote help.
Yeah, yeah. And remember in episode 10, I'm looking at the list here, we talked about the 5 sales objectives. Let's use that for our listeners here to structure this out a little bit. In the first objective, you have to have, a perspective. You have to bring a perspective to the buyer, right? And you've got different perspectives here
the first objective is, who are we selling to? So I made a commitment from selling from cubicle workers to executive offices.
And that shifted the problem from a librarian view to an executive lens. And you tried the insurance policy perspective. You tried hey, wouldn't it be nice to have decisions making influence and experts at your beck and call, right? So you tried different types of perspectives to those people, those executives, because they had different needs.
Yeah, if you think about it, like just sort of reacting to what you're saying, Brian, I would say that my go-in perspective was for Dr. Popper. Boy, do I have a deal for you. you want research services? I'm ready to do discount.
Here's my number. Just call me back. I'll be by my answering machine.
Yeah. And then the next brilliant strategy is going after the CIO at Campbell Soups. I think my offer was, I got better research than the company that you're all in on.
Right.
All you need, just give me that one thing and one report is that's gonna convince you.
Right.
Then the third one was, I'm gonna sell you one service, basically is $25,000 to protect you on one project, and you run 50, you have a $500 million project or a budget. You might have more than one project, but it's very narrow, something very discrete. And if that doesn't pan out, or if I'm not able to go backwards and forwards, inside and outside, that's not going anywhere either.
Right. Yep.
And until ultimately we're going to provide decision-making fuel. We're going to help all of your executive leaders provide decisions, and I don't need to zoom into details on any of it.
Right. So that's good. I mean, you figured out who they were. You tried different perspectives and angles to eventually do the second objective, which was to get access to those folks. Right. You tried the gut it out, I'm going to pound you on the phone, all the way to the, hey, tell me your problems, tell me your challenges, and let's talk about that. Right. So that's cool. You figured that out.
Yep.
And then you had to have, third objective, have a relevant meeting. So, each one of those was different too, it sounds like. The first one, with Dr. Popper wasn't a meeting at all. It was 3, phone calls from legal or whatever.
They were procurement officials. So basically the first one I got thrown out at first base.
Right.
I didn't get executive level access.
Right. There you go.
The second one, I eventually got executive level access by bludgeoning the poor guy's voicemail.
Right.
I got thrown out at second base.
Which was, tell me.
I didn't have a successful meeting. Tell me how you're different than Gartner.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
The next one was the Bristol Myers Squibb one. I got thrown out at third because I wasn't able to connect a shared vision of success. So, okay, you've confirmed for us, we know what we're doing here. I don't know what to talk about, man. Just basically where Keith's coming from.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but you should buy us because you had a good meeting.
And my subject matter expert said you got problems, but he's not here right now.
Right. And I have no idea what he said because I had no clue what the heck you guys were talking about that whole meeting. Because I'm not an SAP expert.
Right. Yeah. And then the next one is, the next
score to run.
Yeah, you score the run, which means you made that value tangible, and they closed the deal. But look at what it took with J&J. It took it was almost lost because you didn't get the logo. Remember from episode 3 where you tried to have that meeting and you needed the logo
that wasn't lost. That I was already secured by then. I'd never.
Oh, okay.
We did in episode 3.
Right, but you got that. So you pursued and you did a figure it out approach until you scored the run. You got the deal, and that's cool because one, you figured it out. 2, you hit the I believe button on solution selling, and for our listeners, the reason why I wanted to go through that was how many salespeople would you guys like to have that go through a training and just go all in and hit the I believe button and stiff arm their peers and believe it's the right thing to do because the company tells you. And that's 1. 2, okay, fine. It might be 20 years or, 15 years or whatever in between. But, I got to tell you, this experience happens today. I mean, if you're driving right now, you're probably shaking your head. This is the exact same challenge. And the challenge actually comes down to that magical moment where the person answers the phone and says, okay, go. What are you going to say?
Yeah, I share this story when I'm invited to do sales kickoffs before I talk about anything that might sound abstract or theoretical, and the receptivity is palpable, and I think it's because solution selling, or what I did, may as well be challenger selling or selling with curiosity or Sandler selling or Miller Hyman selling or value vision selling, whatever the new sales methodology that you're rolling out, because you want your reps to sell. You don't want them to sell to minions anymore. You want them to sell to executives, or if you're selling from IT to business people. That shift, as in the conference room when you're making your plan, sounds like it's little. Well, duh. But the reality of that shift, it's so hard.
Yeah, it's super hard. I mean, look, you got put on a PIP, and I like to talk to your manager. I have a bias on the management side. I'm like, where the hell's your manager in all this? But that's a whole separate podcast. But the last point I want to have is this idea of, for you to be successful, look at what that ingredient was. It was actually less about your solutions and more about the value or the help that your company could provide in the customer's context around decision making. In other words, it became about them and their success, and that's how you got a desk there, right?
Yes.
And I think that's the key of today. And one of the things that I still do today, and as a way to drive this point home, because I've had discussions with execs and I've had discussions with reps, and they say, yeah, okay, fine, this is a real thing. But no, this is palpable, emotional. Like I'm like Free Willy, man. I don't know whether to laugh or cry, because I've been there too. But like, I've for 15 years, I've been on this quest myself to find the salesperson who can talk, 2 minutes about their customer. And the only caveat that I have on this is you can't talk about your product, yourself, or your company for 2 minutes. You have to talk about your customer and the challenges that they have for 2 minutes. And everybody says they can do it. And I would challenge our listeners, go do it yourself and see if you can talk about your company's customers for 2 minutes without talking about your solution, your own products, your solutions, yourself or your company. And sellers have that same gap. And I think that's what I'm seeing here. I'm having this visceral reaction, Scott, was you had to fight the system, so to speak. Even though you hit the I believe button, you had to come up with your own message that was all about your customer, and then come up with a creative solution around helping your customers be successful, almost in spite of your company.
Well, I think that's the key point. Actually, you made several key points, so let me summarize some of them. So one point is, my observation today is, in general, we're pushing our sales reps out. There's a lot of focus on improving our sellers. Let's train up our sellers. Let's get our salespeople to do this. They don't do that. Let's throw more stuff at them. But really what we're not doing is we're not understanding what actually they have to go through. So
right.
Yes, it's true. It would be great if I had more role playing with my sales manager, but that still wouldn't cut it, because all of the material that we had, Brian, everything that we had was based on our products.
Right.
I had to make a conscious effort I basically rewrote all my own collateral.
Yeah. So the PIP worked out of desperation.
Well, I don't know if I don't think the PIP, we want to turn sellers into content creators. But
no.
Really what got home was, you mentioned talking about value. We don't want this to go on longer than give 2 minutes about our customers, but really, or the CIO at J&J that I was working with.
Yeah.
But really the crux of the matter here is, I got it down to something very simple that may sound abstract to you guys, to you. And that simple thing was, I'm in the business of providing content to fuel your decisions. And as simple as that, so that you can say, wow, that's weird. But when is the last time you thought about decision making?
Right.
There are a lot of tools out there for decision making. And if you don't actually really think about decision making, how are you going to be able to leverage experts?
Right.
And by going deep into that and all of those different parts, that's really what it became. So what I'd like to do is sort of shift into what was the prescription. So after I got tapped on the shoulder, what did we actually end up building? And what I'm going to ask each of you guys to do is to think about if you can't empathize with these particular situations, these 5 stages from how hard the call is. It's easy to say in a conference room, yes, I'm going to go sell to executives. That's the easy thing to do. The hard thing to do is to stay committed to doing it, especially when you run into challenges along the way. And if you make it sound too easy and you don't help them simulate the hardness, you're going to create a situation where they think there's something wrong with them and they're going to stop doing it, like a lot of my peers did, and I almost did.
Right.
So what I would suggest is this is what we ended up building. So the story, if you go back and listen to our 3rd episode, it's more of a story about Scott getting tapped on the shoulder, and maybe that'll help explain why I was a little more fiery when people were getting in my way and giving me sales prevention, because those people weren't about fired and I was about fired. So maybe that'll explain. But if you go back and listen to that episode, I was asked by the executive committee to come and fix some of this stuff that I was articulating. So really there's 5 things that we did. So here are 5 things that you can go do in your company. So the first one is define what's the core value to whom you're targeting. So all of the material that we had at Meta Group was targeted at the Mark Fleischmans of the world. We didn't have any clear value, core value targeted at the executives. Yeah. So in this case, if you're following along very specifically, that's decision-making fuel. That's what the core value was. Everything else was irrelevant. Decision-making fuel. Point number 2. The next thing that we did was say, given that that's the issue, how do I add value? So going from the lesson learned from the Keith Keble one, I actually got half of the way there, but then I couldn't answer that question. So there's no possible way that we can train all of our salespeople to be experts on the 17 different services that we had. No way. What can we do to make them more valuable? We can train them on being decision-making experts. So we checked out of the solution selling business, the sales methodology business, and we started focusing on how do we teach our reps to be decision-making experts. So that was point number 2. Point number 3, you need to create a way for customers to tangibly feel that value, tangibly manifest that value. That's not a demo, guys, right? What it is a way for them to experience it. For us at Meta Group, we ended up creating decision-making engines, a framework. We would give the framework away to our clients and they would go, wow, that's great. How do you keep making sure that you're making the right decisions? You need to buy our service to be able to do it. You need the content fuel. And if they don't have a decision-making engine or a way in their head to do it, they couldn't do it. So we concentrated on building these decision-making engines. I'd call that maybe a value framework or something like that. I don't necessarily have the right words for that. But for us at Meta Group, it was a decision-making engine, but a framework of value that customers could see themselves in.
Yeah, and I actually prefer you not to label it because that's one of the things in sales enablement to me is when we throw out something, somebody says, oh, that's buyer persona. You're talking about buyer journey right now, aren't you, Scott?
Right. And I think some people would label what I'm talking about as a commercial insight.
Right.
I don't think this is a commercial insight.
Yeah. So let's not do that, everybody. Let's not label it right now. Let's focus on these 5 things because 1, they worked, and 2, they were field tested and scaled. Right. So first was define the value to the person you're targeting or to the buyer you're targeting. Then, and two, help understand how you add value as a company, right? Not as a seller, is both. And then three is help the customer, the buyers or the buyer network, feel that value, experience that value through a decision-making tool or just, a portion of this service. Right?
Well, let's not call it a tool, because I think part number 4, because there's 2 more parts to this. Part number 4 is we needed to create client-facing guides. So in other words, instead of asking our sellers to know all of the different things, like we talked about SAP, but there's help desk, there's network, campus setup, network strategy, all of those other things, we created guides for all of the key topics. So I think we ultimately had like 70 of these guides that salespeople would just pick and plug and play based on who they were talking to and put in front of the client. They followed the same structure. All of them followed the same uniform structure of the decision-making engine. That's what they trained on. So it was a decision-making process. And any salesperson could walk through that material in a value-added way without knowing any of the subject matter expertise, because they had the structured tool. So what we did is we worked with the subject matter experts to get these points, and it was client-facing. We called those buying blueprints. But really, I would call them today maybe success recipes or something like that. And we had two editions. We had the client-facing edition, and then we had a playbook for our sellers of what the key talking points were, and what capabilities matched to that based on the scenarios our customers would run into. So that was number 4. And then number 5 is, instead of doing demand generation activities, what we did is we launched a integrated marketing program where we launched how-to teleconferences. And basically the how-to teleconferences was, we pick a big strategic theme, like how do you create an IT operations group to be more successful? Or how do you do CRM the right way? How do you do commerce chain management the right way? And what we did is I hosted all of those, and I asked the executives not what the solutions were, but basically what are the challenges that people have, and then what do they need to do to what do they need to be thinking about, AKA what decisions do they need to be making in order to be successful. And we didn't talk anything about our products. So we put all of those things together in an integrated way. As you can imagine, we had to work all the way up with the CEO had to get bought in. We worked and retrained all the salespeople. We built these structures that our research or our product people had to buy into. We asked both marketers and solutions experts to build these guides, and they had to be very structured because they had our reps had to do it. And then we work with marketing in terms of setting up the demand generation program. All of that created that right environment. And what we did is, after we rolled it out, our deal size increased 56%, our win rate decreased 25%, and our sales cycle time from first contact to close collapsed 35%. So we just had massive success, all really predicated on that story that I shared, and being able to relate to the human issues and the, navigating all the complexity and simplifying everything.
Yeah. So I love the human element on that. And also, I'm biased, but to me, that's what you just described is indeed sales enablement. And, we can debate that with our listeners on what that is or not. But hopefully the folks that are listening to this agree. But the second piece of that is, but let me play devil's advocate, because if I'm driving down the road right now, I'm going to have to re-listen to this podcast to get these 5. 1, 2, when you rattle these off, it's a crap ton of work, So, gee, Scott and Brian, you guys just created a whole bunch of work for me to go do this. And, 2, and then 3, how the hell am I going to do all this? Right? I don't have the resources. I don't have the people. Even if I believe this is the right thing to do, I'm not sure how to go do it. So thanks. You just screwed up my commute and the rest of my day now. What would you say to that?
Well, I'd say if you want to know how, call us. That's a different issue. I think the bigger question would be, are the things that are being done today, like how committed are you as a company to sell to executives? That's the first question I'd ask. If it's strategically important, as it is in many, many companies, what choice do you have? Honestly.
Well, the same old choice.
But the same old isn't working.
Yeah, but at least I can check off the box that I was able to do stuff today. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate, but I
hear you. But like I said, okay, so you check the box off. So what? If the company is investing lots of money to move the needle and the needle doesn't move, what's going to happen?
Yeah, eventually they'll say, "Why do we have an enablement function?"
Right.
Let's just put it back the way it was.
Let's hire more reps instead.
Yeah.
And we'll make more calls because it's clearly a numbers game. And, the reason that sales enablement is such an exciting has such exciting potential is because we can get into the business of less. Less is more, and simplifying is more, and higher quality is more. But if we're building generic personas and we're targeting random stakeholders and we're not dealing with the nuances that sellers run into on a day-to-day basis, and if we don't have a structure with which to organize it, we're not going to make a lot of progress. And my story about the sales enablement side on this, Brian, is very much, I wouldn't say it's all sales enablement. There's things that I didn't do that I would like to do, like sales coaching and fixing some of the hiring challenges and making the CRM process much easier. There's so much more I could have done. I would say this is very much a flavor on the content side. How do you get the content side? How do you bring alignment there? What does actually real tangible sales content look like? And if you don't get the buy-in at the top, all you're going to be doing is just generating more stuff. We need playbooks. We need this. We need persona guides. And it just explodes of tons and tons and tons of information. And your reps are going to end up creating their own material anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why the stakeholder management episode was so good. The one right before this one, 12, I believe. But what strikes me on this, and then we have to wrap up, but I'd love your reaction to this. And you and I had this conversation, 10 years ago, and, I've learned a lot since then, but we were talking and I was like, this is it's just a mountain of stuff. And it seems so huge. And you said, you know what, Brian, if we don't do it, if we don't tackle the complexity, then who's going to do it? And remember, you wrote that one report that if the complexity is not tackled and simplified on behalf of reps, they have two choices. They show up and throw up, or they push all the complexity to their customer in that regard. So the customer ends up having to sort through it to figure it out. Or they do this superhuman heroic effort that you did, where they get put on a PIP and almost fired and have to go create their own stuff to bridge that gap. And neither.
You're right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, so we should probably go through that report. And what Brian's referring to is a report I wrote called "Engineering Valuable Sales Conversations," and we should probably revisit that. I know we had a few listeners that have brought that up before and said we should update it. But yeah, what Brian's talking about is what we're dealing with is a complexity problem, and no one likes to talk about complexity. And whether you like it or not, you have a complexity coping strategy. Coping strategy number one is no one else who's supporting sales confronts it. So we push it on the backs of reps. Most of those reps aren't going to confront it. So they're going to push it back on the backs of customers. And those customers are going to have the procurement people yell at you and tell you, we don't want to hear from you.
Right. He's making my life harder.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically what I was doing, is pushing the complexity on to Dr. Popper at Merck and the CIO at Campbell Soups. Well, now the next part then is, well, that's clearly not working. So Scott's decided that he's going to go into the business of creating his own content. And he started out doing that first. So it's the heroic effort. By the way, I also shut down, I turned off, and I purposely would enter my data in incorrectly, so that corporate couldn't send out have different email addresses, so corporate couldn't communicate to my prime targets because the information that they were sending was just so confusing.
Yeah.
So
in that free willy moment, you had a choice to make. Either I'm going to do this in spite of my company, and do this on my own, or I'm going to quit before I get canned.
Right.
There's a lot of reps out there, and myself included. I actually quit before you gutted it out. Kudos to you. But I hit the eject handle in my situation. But I think there's a lot of people out there, a lot of reps in particular, that have that exact same free willing moment.
Yeah. And so then the other coping strategy is the heroic effort, which is basically what we're asking people to do when we do challenger sale or whatever, because the burden, we're asking them to figure out what the executive priorities are. We're asking them to figure out what the buying impacts are. We're asking them to figure out 3-2-1 buyer. We're asking them to figure out, make sure you follow the buying process, make sure you do this, make sure you do that, make sure you do this. And the amount of inspection, but none of that stuff is accurate because there's no such thing as a buying school. There's no executives who's ever been through, this is how I buy stuff. It just doesn't exist.
Or solve problems.
Right. So we're basically putting the heroic effort on the backs of reps. And that's a very costly and risky proposition because only about 20% of the reps can do it. And really where Brian and I think about this is that the opportunity for sales enablement is to manage the complexity for the sellers and come up with these integrated programs like we just talked about here.
That's right. And that's going to be how we end this is, you all have to make a decision too, and to tackle that complexity or not. And there is a lot of opportunity to elevate your role and your function by tackling it. Give us a call if you're doing that. We certainly need more discussions around that. Scott and I have a lot to learn still. There's a lot of complexity that we have to navigate, and we would like to have more inputs around that from folks that are tackling these issues. So give us a call, shoot us an email on engage@insidese.com. Also tell us the stories, the good, the bad, and challenge us. This was a bit of a dated story. Is it still relevant or not? Call us out on it. Let us know. We appreciate you listening. We went a little bit over today, but I wanted to make sure we landed that. Scott, thanks for the stories. Thanks for your time. We'll see you guys later. Take care.
Thanks for joining us. To become an insider and amplify your journey, make sure you've subscribed to our show. If you have an idea for what Scott and Brian can cover in a future podcast or have a story to share, please email them at engage@insidese.com. You can also connect with them online by going to insidese.com, following them on Twitter, or sending them a LinkedIn request.